If you are a regular user on the internet, you probably know what a virus is. But there's one that really stands out.
Experts are calling the WannaCry virus the largest cyber attack in history.
The WannaCry cyber attack continues to claim victims across the globe.
The malware encrypted and rendered useless hundreds of thousands of computers in hospitals, schools, businesses, and homes in over 150 countries.
It caused an insane amount of chaos and was probably the most impactful cyber attack in history for normal people like you and me. But how did we get to this point? Let's take a trip back in time and explore the history of computer viruses. Our journey begins way back in 1971. The 70s were all about disco, playing Pong at the arcade, and The Godfather.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Computers were also getting more advanced, and the very first computer virus, known as Creeper, made its debut. It wasn't really harmful, just a major annoyance. It moved between computers on an experimental computer network called ARPANET, which was an early version of the internet. And if a computer got infected, it simply displayed the message, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." So computer viruses were born, but the name computer virus didn't exist yet. In 1983, a computer scientist named Fred Cohen created an unnamed piece of malware, and he came up with the term computer virus to describe it. Just a few years later, in 1986, the brain virus was born. And this was actually a big deal. It was the first one infecting IBM PCs running Microsoft DOS. It was spread through infected floppy drives. And for all the young people watching, yes, these things were real.
Dear God.
Now, Brain wasn't trying to hurt anyone. All it did was keep track of pirated software, and if you got infected, it even showed you the address and phone number of the creators, so they could help you remove it. Such a helpful virus. In the 80s and 90s, viruses were mostly spread using floppy drives because the internet wasn't around yet. The motive for creating these viruses wasn't anything specific. It was just guys who wanted to try something out, mess with computer code, and create something for fun that would replicate and spread around the world. So they spread on floppy drives and were infecting boot sectors. If you had an infected floppy drive in your PC, it would boot from that drive and infect your computer. Also, it would then infect every floppy drive you put in your PC afterwards. I'll actually show you some examples of how that looked if your DOS system got infected. Here's a couple ones that I thought were quite funny. There's this one called Skynet, and it pretends like it's the Terminator before slowing down your computer. This one is called LSD, which is kind of trippy. This one is called Ambulance. Very nice. And there's also one from the Netherlands called Cough Shop. And all it does is show you this screen. Yeah, those were the viruses back in the day. Fast forward to the 90s and the internet was born. With it came a whole new playground for viruses to spread themselves. The Morris worm was one of the earliest examples, which ended up crashing a lot of computers. And the creator, Robert Morris, was actually the first person ever to be convicted under the new US Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. During this time, it was also that antivirus pioneers like McAfee and Avast emerged, but so did new types of viruses. Macroviruses became very popular. They worked by hiding in an infected Word document, and if you opened that document, a simple script would execute. A virus called Melissa was one of the most notorious ones. It would spread itself by sending an infected Word document to the first 50 contacts in a victim's contact list, making it a real pain in the ass to deal with. And to make it even worse, social engineering became a very important tactic for hackers who would manipulate human psychology to trick users into downloading or opening their malicious files. The Melissa virus, for example, sent infected files to people and named them, "Here is that document you requested. Don't show to anyone else. Sexy.jpg or naked wife." And I know that nowadays we've seen these kinds of scams so much that it seems logical not to open a file named sexy.jpg. But back in the day, this was the first of its kind. This had never been done before, so people didn't expect it. The same thing, but worse, happened in the year 2000. There was this worm going around called the I love you worm. It worked the same way as Melissa in terms of emailing itself to people in your contacts. And what they did was actually really smart. So there was this file extension called .vbs. And maybe if people saw an email with a .vbs file, they wouldn't open it. They would be kind of suspicious. And this was actually a design error by Microsoft, because the .vbs file was something that Windows knew. And because the file format was known, it didn't show the extension. The I Love You worm sent a file called loveletterforyou.txt.vbs. But yeah, Windows didn't show you that last .vbs part, so people thought they were opening a harmless text file, but instead they opened a VBS file that ran a script and infected their computer. This was one of the biggest cyber disasters at the time and cost anywhere from $5 to $9 billion in damages. It spread really fast, from the Philippines, where it started, to Hong Kong, to the EU, and finally to the US. It was such a problem at the time that the Pentagon, the CIA, the British Parliament, and all major businesses completely shut down their email servers in order to protect themselves. Then, in 2003, something happened that changed the malware scene forever. Up until now, viruses were created for fun. They were made to create panic, fear, disruption, and simply be annoying. No one gained anything from them. But in 2003, creators realized they could actually make money from their malicious creations. The fizzer worm was the first worm specifically created to make money. If your computer got infected, the worm would send out a load of spam emails from your account. And shady companies would then pay to be promoted in those spam emails.
What do you sell?
Spam.
So Fizzer made people realize viruses could do more than just cause some damage. What used to be a hobbyist game now became a lucrative industry with organized and professional criminal groups. A very clear example of this is this guy, Tariq al-Daour. He was using keyloggers to steal people's credit card data. He stole almost 2 million euros and used that money to purchase gear like hiking boots, GPS navigators, knives, and he was shipping all this to Iraq, to terrorist organizations who were fighting there. The US government also realized that malware could do more than just spread some fear. They started working on a malicious computer worm called Stuxnet, and this was top secret. We don't know exactly when they started developing it, but the general guess is that they started working on it at least since 2005. Stuxnet was a highly specialized malware designed to only target certain Siemens computers that were used to monitor industrial processes. And it just so happened to be that Iran used those Siemens computers for their nuclear program. It was a very coordinated attack, and at first the US denied any involvement. But nowadays we know that Stuxnet was actually part of a US and Israeli intelligence operation called Operation Olympic Games. So yeah, the mindset around malware had changed completely. It wasn't just about creating something for fun anymore. Malware was now capable of disrupting entire nations. Until 2011, most infections were invisible. You wouldn't know that you were infected with a virus. But that changed when ransomware was developed. The first one was GP code. And what GP code did was it infected your system and then waited for your PC to be idle. It encrypted all of your files and changed your Windows wallpaper to a message explaining what to do. They asked for $125, and after you paid, they would send you a decryptor to get your files back. And this worked because, well, for a lot of people, their personal data was worth a lot more than $125. Especially if they didn't have a backup, yeah, this was the only way to get their personal documents and pictures back. So make sure to always back up your data. And then, in 2017, on May 12th to be precise, the WannaCry attack began. The initial infection started in Asia at 7:44 in the morning. Within a day, the code was reported to have infected more than 230,000 computers in over 150 countries. In one single day. This ransomware attack was of a scale we had never seen before.
While victims received ransom demands, paying those demands did not unlock their computers.
200,000 computers, hospitals, banks, government agencies, we're talking about at least
150 countries.
The first wave of WannaCry victims included at least 16 state-run hospitals in the United Kingdom, putting patients' lives at risk.
WannaCry is a reminder of how far we've come, all the way from Creeper and the funny-looking DOS viruses to something so dark and evil, affecting people's personal lives. So what have we learned from all these years of malware? Stay vigilant and always think twice before opening a file named sexy.jpg.